Welcome back, everybody, to the Performance Circus. I am one of your hosts, Mitch Creek, and I'm with the lovely Rebecca Cole. Now, Cole, you've come in today with a shiner, and my eyes are watering looking at you right now. Not because your beauty is just radiating in through my body, but you have a black eye, and it's hard to look away from. What happened?
Yeah, well, I'm a guard, so I don't get a block often. And I guess my teammate wasn't too happy about it. So I copped an elbow after I rejected the shit out of it.
Now, I don't want to throw you under the bus right now, but I don't know if there's any return fire, but that's an absolute shiner and you should be proud of. That's a good one.
Thanks. And I feel like, though, I've tried to put makeup on to cover it, but I feel like it has made it look shinier than it already is. And this morning, the fire alarm went off, and this was my one morning off, right? So quickly got changed, went in our lift, which is like full of mirrors, and I looked at myself. I was like,
yep.
Coley, you look rough. 1, startled. 2, black eye. I was like, now I've gone outside and everyone can see this, but that's all right.
Look, it's a hell of a way to kick off an episode. My eyes are watering as soon as you sat down, and it's hard to look at, but look, I'll look at your left eye. I'll look at your left eye like a pirate. Look, we've had a wonderful guest on in Joe Fourier, Big Joe, the breathwork specialist. He's a man that has traveled the world and done so many vast, amazing things. He spoke to us about his alignment, his chakras, his energy, being in the NFL, how he was introduced to breathwork, and the rise to the top, the fall to the bottom, and then finding his feet on the ground and then starting off again and saying, well, who is my true authentic self, which we always talk about, and now finding a path into his breathwork. He's been practicing, relentlessly, tirelessly, investigating, learning, creating new spaces for, multiple years now, until he finally let other people know, this is who I am. I'm a proud person to say, I've tried it, I've lived it. Now, I live and breathe it. Good little throw the pun in there. But today's Power Rep, I really wanted to talk about things that we have tried in our life, things that we're currently trying that maybe have or haven't worked, and what some of those things are, because Joe never experienced breath work. Now he's saying to us, he feels this enlightenment. There's almost like a euphoric, drug-affected feeling he gets, from your psilocybin, your DMTs that he talked about, like the ayahuasca journeys that you can do. He's now getting that from breath work. And if you said to me, 5-6 years ago, hey, if Mitch, you just breathe the right way and, do this and that, you're going to get high as shit and having a wonderful trip. I'd be like, well, that sounds pretty fun. So let's give it a crack. But look, I haven't done a lot of breath work. I've only done a little bit of the Wim Hof with the ice bars, but he actually took us for a breath work session. The boys absolutely loved it. Like, we left that breathwork session and I was nearly in tears. There was multiple guys in the room that were emotional, that felt a release of tension, that felt a whole bunch of a variety of different feelings, but he did such an incredible job. We had 45 to an hour with him. And to, shout out to Big Joe. He was phenomenal. He was like a big brother. He gave everyone a hug at the end. We told each other we loved each other, and we felt this incredible connection because it was like we have so much to offer to each other. And he's allowed me now to see breath work is something that I have to invest in. Time, financially, if I have to go and buy programs and learn them and research them, that for me is something that I haven't put a lot of time into, but I'm going to start investing heavily in this off season, because what I got out of a 45-minute session from him was probably more than I'd gotten out of probably a dozen sessions with the psych, with, people in my circle. It felt such of a release of energies that shifted my pathway to healing and thinking and being okay within myself. And I wasn't the only person. There was quite a few guys on the team that said the same thing, and it was pretty special. So to segue off of that, what's some things you've learned from your past that maybe you've tried, maybe have worked for a little bit and then have crashed and burned, or some things that you've invested time in and said, you know what, this is awesome, I'm going to double down on this, and it's still a consistent theme in your life?
Yeah, I think there's been a few things, and probably I feel like COVID was a really big time where I was like, I have time to try things. I think there were more, let's say, opportunities that you could try things at home. You had way more time. I guess everyone was putting stuff out there on the socials, and it was like, okay, let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't. This was also a time where my father, Gary, was going through his cancer battle. So he really deep dived. And to be honest, I spoke about him as being one of my mentors. I think I probably went along his journey, like with him a bit, but definitely not to his extent. So I feel like COVID was the time where I was like, okay, let's see what I can implement, what works for me and what doesn't. So I 1,000% tried meditation. And I think we spoke about this with DK.
Yeah.
I just can't sit there with my thoughts, or maybe I need to try a new app or something else. It's just, it doesn't work for me. I find my focus doesn't really settle there, and maybe that's something I need to try. Breath work. That is something I have never done. But for me, if I'm having to control my breath, I'm focusing in and honing down on something. So you know, getting that experience with Big Joe, massive. Like who, you know, really gets that opportunity.
And I was the same. I couldn't sit still for 30 seconds for, you know, if I put on a guided meditation, I typically would sit there and I've got to be at the beach somewhere. I've got to hear the waves. I've got to have the wind. I've got to feel the sand. I have to have these, you know, extrinsic like factors like allow me to kind of, like, okay, can I do it? But that breath work is the same thing. I was just thinking of my breath and it was really weird. I was just like, okay, in, hold, tummy, mouth, nose, eyes, ears. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, this is stupid. And then 45 minutes later, I was like, I'm crying, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm crying, I'm happy. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And by the end of it, I got up and I was like, oh, we all looked around like, what the fuck was that? We need to do more of this shit.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I can't meditate. I sit there and I'm like, fuck it. Let's go do something else. But this, we have to try.
Or I just find I fall asleep, if I'm being perfectly honest, in mindfulness. I'm asleep.
That's called a power nap.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I don't think actually any of that worked. But I think if I have something that I can focus and hone in on, that is something that's better for me. But I think I also learned through Dad is he found meditation a different way. So he does a lot of the Wim Hof stuff. He does a lot of the, you know, cold water work, all of that. But he's like, I can find meditation anywhere, whether that be I'm in the cold water and I'm closing my eyes for 10 to 20 minutes and I'm, you know, thinking about this is what I want to do for my day or, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's not necessarily like going to be like everyone else's where it's lying down or sitting and it's a and I'm meditating. Is you can find it in lots of different ways, which I think that probably opened my eyes to, okay, there isn't just one way for everyone because I thought I was doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But for me, I love cold water therapy. That's something I find for my mind and my body works so well. So I've said I've done it every single day. That's just with a cold shower every morning, every night. And that's something that I find starts my day with like a big tick. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. Like this morning, it's been 38 for the last 4 days and now it's like 18. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a cold one. And I put it on and I was like, woo! But just doing that, I'm like, I'm going to have a good day.
And that's the thing though. People go, oh, I couldn't do an ice bath. It's 3 degrees outside or like it's 10 degrees outside at night. And I'm like, yeah, but the fucking water's 2.
Yeah.
Like it's colder in the water. So when you get out of the water, you're like, this is fucking hot. Like, it's good weather outside. I might go for a run.
Exactly. And then, so cold water therapy is definitely a big tick for me. And then Dad got me onto a lot of like self-help books in COVID and I do not read. Let's put that out there. I do not read. But these, I was just like chowing down. It was so good. I really enjoyed it. And I think something else that I found worked is if I learned something from this book, I would highlight it. I would be writing things down and I would be setting goals, whether they're short term or long term. I found that really helped me and I wanted to remember what I had read. Otherwise, I'm like, what's the point of reading this book? So for me, that was also a really big thing was the self-help books. And
do you have any that jump out at you a little bit?
Atomic Habits I think that's a great starter for anyone who hasn't quite done that. And what was good, I was like, hey, I'm already doing these things. Or, hey, that's something I need to add.
Kind of like a recognition of, I think I know what I should be doing. And then someone really smart and powerful goes, here's a book. And then you're like, I was. It's really nice.
Yeah. So, and then I also found you spoke about like psychologists. I remember when I think in the latest set we had dropped, it was about not making a national team or getting cut, whatever it was. Deepest, darkest place I'd been, and I was going to a psychologist, but like, yeah, so I formed a bit of like weird eating, right? And I knew why I was doing it. I was like, it's not because I look in the mirror and I'm like, hey, I look fat. I didn't think that. This was a control thing. I couldn't control that I had been cut from 3x3 squad, Opal squad, and this was the only thing I could do, right? And now I was like, what is wrong with me? And I was going to this psychologist, but like I didn't really get a whole lot out of it. Yeah. And again, what we see is a sports psychologist majority of the time compared to, I guess, an individual who's not in the sporting field. You'll see a normal psychologist. And I think it's important. You need to go see if they work for you. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But for me, I think that's where I found if I know what's going on with me, I actually need to open up to my close circle. And we've spoken about that, the people you trust. So for me, it wasn't a psychologist. It was like, hey, I know what's going on with me. I need to be open with my close ones so that they can help me because that's what I need right now. And then probably another one that's worked for me is, again, from Dad. He sent me articles left, right and centre. Yeah, Gaza. Yeah, and this one was actually about food. And so for my body, obviously I've had 10 knee surgeries.
Surely you get a discount code on the 11th, right?
All right. No, there is not an 11th unless I'm like 60 and it's a knee replacement.
Yeah, you need a knee replacement.
2 for 1.
Oh, look, Cola, you've had 42 knees. Like, here's a new prosthetic robot leg.
Right. But mine was about certain foods that I would put in my body. And I was like, wow. When I read this, Dad was like, certain sugars, certain fats, this is going to make your body more inflamed. And I was like, nah, man, come on, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Literally. And, maybe I have Sunday where I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat trash or, whatever it is. And the Monday I'm like, oh, I can feel it in my joints. I can feel it in my bones. So now I'm like, okay, I know I have to eat properly, Monday, Tuesday, maybe Tuesday night I can have a little treat because I'm not having to train Wednesday. Yeah. So I can feel a bit more, I guess inflamed and my joints not as good. But I'm like, my food, what I eat has to be spot on. Yeah. And they're probably my 3 things is, cold water therapy, amazing. Breath work, really want to try. Self-help books and writing down your goals and, habits you can change or you want to start to implement, massive for me. And then food, what I'm putting in my body.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, just like touching on those, I know you've done a lot of work over your career in a lot of different ways. And the cool part of it is we're still learning. Like I'm still figuring out what foods are great for me. Like I had a gastroscopy and a colonoscopy last year because I had issues with, like in my stools. I had really complex issues going on. I had a lot of uncertainty about it. We had colon cancer and throat cancer in the family. So I was directly in line and could be affected by that. So my chances were a lot higher. Now I was like, fuck, I need to be proactive here. And I didn't really know what I was kind of walking into the first day. And I just remember sitting in the waiting room like, all right, like here we go. And they're like, all right, go home, have this. It's called Prep C and you're going to have a colonoscopy tomorrow and we'll just see what's going on. And then they're like, well, if you've ever like been aware enough of your body and you go, something doesn't feel right, typically something's not right. And I felt that. And it was like the first time I'd really felt it ahead of time. And I'm so glad that I went in, got a check. Our incredible doctors, they were quick to it. Like a couple of days, I was in, I had the little mini op. I came out and I sat there and I was like, fuck, I need to be better again. Like I always felt like I'm probably like 80% good, 20% like, I'll just fucking splurge a little bit. Now I'm more like 92, 7, 8. Like I'm getting a lot more strict with things because I know now there's so much to lose and there's so much at stake. Like I need to feel good every day. If I feel shit because my food's been bad, my mental health declines. And I know that now. I know if I have this or I have that, I'm going to feel like shit the next day. If I go out and have too many drinks, I'm going to feel like shit for 3 days. I know these things now. And I start to go, all right, what am I going to do today to help tomorrow be a better day? my biggest thing now is my food intake. I literally, this is not even a plug, the Art of Balance on Instagram, Mel, her and her partner do these like meals, right? They do the pre-made meals. Now they're incredible. They're the best one I've had by country mile. I pay for them every week. She's offered over and over again. Oh, if you get some people, you can, I was like, fuck no, your shit's unreal. Like, let me just fucking buy this. This is awesome. All my friends use it, like all my mates, family, like everyone gets stuff from her. Food for me is everything. When I wasn't controlling my food, my emotions were up and down. I was like a prepubescent boy again, just like acne, skinny, awkward, like angry, happy, sad, everything. Now I'm just on a constant level of like, I have shit to do and I know I'm operating at a high level because I'm putting high level stuff in my body. Now there's times where you be a dickhead and you go out and you have a few cocktails and you're like, oh, it's okay. But that's my body saying, all right, I'm allowed to have that. Yeah. I've worked really hard and I know what I have this week and I know where I can structure in a few drinks and some tacos with the boys. So for me, my food was a massive one as well, just as you have. Cold water therapy, shut it down. Like every day, without fail, religion to me. Breath work is going to be one that I put a lot of time into because I got a lot out of one session, but I truly gave into it. Like I didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to be tough for the boys. Like I've cried in front of my teammates. I've been honest and vulnerable to them many times. But the 99% of the time where I'm, Mitch Creek, I'll kick your door down like, ooh, let's go team, let's go. That's who they know I can be, but they also know that I'm honest and they know that I can be vulnerable and that gives them a safe space to be the same. So when I went into that breath work, I literally went in there like, I'm going to have some deep shit come up and I'm going to purge like an absolute psychopath and just scream. And it's like the exorcism. Then I was like, it's okay if I do that. That's cool. Because I knew that I had someone in Big Joe to actually facilitate that. So for me, giving into something wasn't trying it and then seeing if it worked. It was giving into it enough to be okay with the result, good or bad. And I think a lot of people sit there and go, oh, I tried this at, 6 weeks I tried it and didn't work. Like, I'm not sure how long you tried meditating for and how many times you gave it a go, but I thought the 100 rule is the best thing. Do it 100 times for 100 days in a row without fail, and then you can make your determination. You go to the gym 100 days in a row, even if you're going for 5 minutes, you've still gone to the gym. That's a fucking give yourself a pat on the back. That's pretty hard to do. And I can't even do 100 days in a row. So for me, it's understanding that whatever I'm going to try, I'm just going to give it a crack. I've spoken to sports psychs. I've spoken to, family psychs. I've spoken to trauma specialists. I've done Reiki. I've done chakra cleansing. I've done quantum healing. There's so many things that I've tried with other individuals where some I've had really good responses to. Other times I've had my own blockage. I've stood in my own way and said, I'm not ready to do this right now. I need to take a step back. I need to see what I need. And sometimes it is just my family and my friends. And it's like, man, I'm really struggling today. Like this is how I'm feeling. And they're great. Like we all know it. I'm there for my friends. They're there for me. But trying things is the greatest form of understanding what this world really has to offer. Without trying, we're just going to be stagnant and in the same position. If we try something, we go, we like it or we don't like it. Cool. Now I can make a determination. Do I want to try it again or do I not want to try it again? And from what I need to do, I've said this a few times now, me and Gary, we need to go and have a bottle of wine.
You do.
And we need to sit down. So Gary, I know I'm going overseas soon, but mate, we're going to sit down. We're going to crack a couple bottles of red. I'm going to get an Uber home afterwards, or you're going to have to drive.
Damn straight. I'm going to be sitting at the table like, these two.
We'll be besties and Bec will be sitting over there with her partner and I'll be with Gaza, just having a merry old time. But I think that's the cool part of life is I've tried so many things and a lot of stuff hasn't worked. But I'm not afraid to keep trying because I know within failure there's a lesson to be learned every single time. And with every lesson I learn, I go, okay, cool. This isn't a good, this isn't a bad. This is just another step in a direction where I want to try and find who I want to be, to myself, most importantly now, to other people, and to my family. Like if I can figure some of those things out, I'm going to put myself in a pretty happy place. And I'm starting to feel that now. And that for me is the most important thing. So yeah, I love yours. Like I'm not a massive reader. I started to listen to more podcasts and I like, of all people, like Theo Von is obviously a comedian. If you haven't heard of Theo Von's podcast, he's hilarious. He's extremely inappropriate for most listeners. And he talks absolute shit the whole time. But he has really cool guests on and they have really cool, interesting conversations. And sometimes I don't talk about a single thing for 2 hours, but it's hilarious. But Sean Strickland is an MMA, heavyweight fighter, light heavyweight. He just, defeated Adesanya. He just lost against Dupreez, I think it is, in the recent UFC matchup. But Sean Strickland's like the mecca of American kind of fighter athlete right now. And he went on Theo's podcast and ended up talking about his family's trauma for the first time in his life. And he actually started getting really emotional, and no one had ever seen that side of Sean before. And Theo just sat there and he's just like, we don't have to do anything. He's like, man, I'll just sit here with you. He's like, I'm just be here with you. Didn't say anything. He just sat in a space with him. And that was a moment where I was like, fuck, like the toughest man in the world, the most feared person on the planet is sitting there talking to a comedian. And for the first time has now been vulnerable enough to talk about his childhood trauma. And he was like, he just realized for the first time how severe it was. That like solidified for me that no matter who we are, whether a mum or a dad or a brother or a sister, a professional athlete or just a homebody, you are never too strong physically to be, mentally weak. Like there's no such thing. Like it's such a stigma and we have to break it. Like the toughest person in the world physically is now admitting he's not okay and he needs a little bit of help. And I think that did him a world of good. So to see someone who we don't even know maybe listens to our podcast, and I've had some great messages, which is awesome. I'm sure you had a couple people be like, hey, this is good. What you're doing helps people. I hope that this episode helps you in some kind of way. Try something new. If you haven't tried it, research it a little bit. Go on YouTube. I mean, I go on YouTube all the time and I end up getting lost in a maze of like, oh, the earth has not a North Pole and a South Pole and there's an earth inside the earth. And I'm like, it's true. But then all of a sudden you're like, no, there's different things that I need to be aligned with. And some of those things, like the breath work, is a big one that I need to put time into. Sound healing, frequencies. We talk about high vibrational energies. We have to be more consistent in that, because when we operate at a higher frequency, we attract things on that level. So I think it's really important that we try and we're okay and we surrender to the good and the bad, because if we keep trying, we're always going to put ourselves in a great place.
Amen. Vulnerability is power. I feel like we've said that before. And be open to new experiences, whether you're listening to our podcast, someone else's, you're on YouTube, you're watching a TV show, and there's something that pops up that, hey, this could actually make me mentally stronger, physically stronger. Just give it a crack. That's what life is about.
Yeah.
Just give in 100%. It may work for you, it might not, but as long as you give in to the experience, allow the opportunity to come to you, I think you will benefit yourself and you will get something out of it, whether it's not a failure, it's a lesson, or you're like, yep, I'm implementing this into my daily routine. So what we would love from this Power App, if anyone out there, the listeners, have any things that Mitch and I could try that we haven't spoken about, please leave a comment, because we want to get the best out of ourselves on the court, off the court, with our friends, with our families, with life, with business. Leave a comment.
That'd be good.
Yeah, let us know something.
Get some pearlers.
I know.
Eat seaweed for a month. You'll jump higher. All right, let's go.
I will do it. Yeah. But this Power Work was amazing. If you're into that breath work, please look up Big Joe. And thanks to Champion for making this episode possible. This is the Performance Circus with Mitch, Craig and Bec, and we'll speak to you the same time next week.